Does your cardiac output have any effect on sodium reabsorption? Of course it does. What kind of question is that? Welcome, this is Medicosis Perfectionalis, where medicine makes perfect sense. We are in the middle of a series called Fluids, Electrolytes, and Acid-Base Disturbance. In the previous videos, we have talked about the famous carbonic anhydrase inhibitor and how they cause normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Today I'll talk about the cardiac output and its effect on sodium reabsorption. Does it favor reabsorption? Does it favor secretion? Let me tell you. Let's say that your cardiac output decrease. You're having less blood in the system, inside the blood vessel. Do you think the kidney will just stay still and watch? No, it's gonna act. By increasing sodium reabsorption, water is gonna follow sodium to try to maintain your mean systemic arterial blood pressure because your kidney is awesome. With that being said, now let's get started. 4 videos ago, I've talked about the normal kidney physiology in the proximal convoluted tubule. It's very unlikely that you will understand anything in this video if you haven't watched this video first, so please do it. Do it. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey said, "Effective people put first things first," and the kidney listened. First, let me tell you how awesome your kidney is. Your kidney receives 25%, which happens to be equal 1/4 of the cardiac output. The cardiac output normally is around 5 liters per minute, and 1/4 of this, where I grew up, we call this 1¼ liters per minute. We call this renal blood flow, the blood that's flowing to your kidney. 55% of blood is plasma, as you know, by the way. That's why the hematocrit value is the rest, the 45%, because 45% of your blood is made of red blood cell, leaving 55% plasma. Okay, so plasma is 55%. We multiply this by the 1.25 and we get 600 mLs per minute. We call this the renal, not blood, but plasma flow. The plasma that's going to the kidney. And of course, this number is going to be less than this number because plasma are less than the whole blood. Think, people. Did you know from this renal plasma flow, only 20% is going to be filtered, and we call this the GFR. Okay, so let's guess the GFR. If I told you the filtration fraction is 20%, the renal plasma flow is 600. Can you guess the GFR? Yes, you remember your scissors in 5th class math? Yes, honey. So the GFR is going to be equal the renal plasma flow times the filtration fraction, which happens to equal 20% times the renal plasma flow, which was 600. 20% of 600 is around 125. I'm sorry, it's 120. I'm bad at math. That's why I went to medical school. I mean, let's be honest. So GFR is around 120. Let's call it 100 to 125. So let's say 125 ml per minute. You want per hour times 60. You want per day times 24. And you get 180 liters per minute. You have only 3 liters of your plasma in your body. So the kidney filters your plasma 60 times per day, 24/7. Something to be thankful for. On the other hand, hemodialysis draws your blood at a rate of 200 to 400 mLs per minute, and this is only 3 times a week. It's not 24/7. Something to be thankful for, you selfish, ungrateful twit. Sorry. So here's your nice capsule. 600 mLs, this is the renal plasma flow, RPF. And 125 is going to be filtered. This is the GFR. And the rest is going to go to the peritubular capillaries. Here's the peritubular capillaries. We have 2 forces. We have a pushing force from the peritubular capillary to the outside, and this is the good old hydrostatic pressure. And we have a pulling force towards the peritubular capillary, and this is the good old oncotic pressure. These are the famous Starling forces, baby. Decrease capillary hydrostatic pressure. Let's suppose that your hydrostatic pressure, your pushing force, has decreased, and at the same time you have increased your capillary oncotic pressure. You are pulling more, so you can't push, but you can pull. This will lead to reabsorption. The fluid is going to go from the tubule to the peritubular capillary because you are capable of pulling. This is called reabsorption. On the other hand, if you increase the peritubular capillary hydrostatic pressure, you can push, but you cannot pull. You'll push the fluid out to the urine, called secretion. I've talked about the mechanism of tubular transport in my video about the proximal convoluted tubule in this series, so please watch it. Your kidney is very old school, follows grandma's way of handling money. Live on less than you make, spend less, save more, prioritize your spending, put first things first. And the kidney listened to grandma's wisdom. I would spend as little ATP as possible, and when I spend it, most of my ATP will be spent on sodium. Why sodium? It's plentiful, it's the main ECF ion. It's osmotically active, we get it, and effective. Effective? Do you mean there is such a thing as ineffective osmoles? Yes, the urea is a classic example because urea is ineffective. Urea is BS, no pun intended. Some of you didn't get it, just drove right by you. And the calculated osmolality equals double the sodium, so the sodium is the hero of osmosis. Next, sodium attracts chloride by charges. This is called the law of electroneutrality. It attracts water. This is called the law of osmosis. It attracts glucose and amino acid, the law of secondary active transport. Many birds with one stone, the one stone here being the ATP. The ATP knows how to save energy. Very good. I've talked about the physiology of the proximal convoluted tubule in my previous video in this playlist, but in brief, the proximal convoluted tubule absorbs around 2/3 of sodium, then everything follows. Chloride follows, water follows, glucose and amino acid follow, calcium and bicarbonate. What goes against sodium is the hydrogen. The hydrogen is being secreted at this border called luminal border. And of course, this was not the case under the influence of acetazolamide, the famous carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. That's why you ended up with acidosis, baby. The internal environment of your body is the extracellular fluid. Oh, I thought that the internal environment was the intracellular fluid. Honey, you are as naive as the B lymphocyte before it recognizes the antigen. The internal environment is what your cells are bathing in. They are bathing in the ECF. The ECF is your internal environment of your body. It's inside of you, not inside of the cell. Big difference. ECF volume regulation is very important, so we need the thirst sensation, the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, some baroreceptor, the ADH with the famous V1 and V2 vasopressin receptor, and we need reabsorption of sodium and water by the kidney. In today's video, we're talking about this. We have something called the effective arterial blood volume because you thought that all of the ECF is going to end up in the plasma. No, some of it will end up in the interstitial space. We're talking about the blood that's in the blood vessel, the fluid that's in the blood vessel called effective arterial blood volume, EABV. Generally speaking, it corresponds with the extracellular fluid volume, this one, and the total body sodium. For example, let's say in cases of hemorrhage, the effective arterial blood volume is low. Of course, you're losing blood. The extracellular fluid is low. Oh yeah, because you're losing blood. And the total body sodium is low. Absolutely. Then, let's say you have been infused with 3% sodium chloride because your doctor is an idiot. Effective arterial blood volume is high. Yep, we're gaining fluid. Extracellular fluid volume is high. Yep, we're gaining fluid. Total body sodium is high. Yep, you're gaining fluid that contains sodium. However, just because your extracellular fluid volume is high doesn't necessarily mean that the effective arterial blood volume is high, because the fluid could be accumulating in the interstitial space called edema. Because in CHF, forgive my language, you're full of water. Your ankles are swollen. You're full of water. Your jugular veins are congested, raising your jugular venous pressure. You're full of water. Your liver capsule is distended to the point of being painful. You're full of water. Your liver is starting to look like a nutmeg because you're full of water. Only medical students will understand this because it's profound. Reabsorption at the proximal convoluted tubule depends on the filtration fraction. Okay, we got it. Let's say that you vasodilated the afferent arteriole, more blood is going to get filtered, called increased filtration fraction. Let's say that you constricted the efferent, okay, more blood is going to get filtered because all of the blood coming to here will end up here, not here, because you have constricted this. This will increase your filtration fraction. Let's say that you are having, let's say, hemorrhage. You decrease your extracellular fluid volume. Okay, You decrease your effective arterial blood volume. We get it. You decrease the renal plasma flow. Of course, we get it. So, since the renal plasma flow is low, the capillary hydrostatic pressure is low. Of course, because it got all of the fluid that was coming to here, and since you have been bleeding, there is no or less blood coming to here. There is less blood inside the peritubular capillary. The hydrostatic pressure is decreased. We got it. Since you decrease your effective arterial blood volume starting here, the capillary oncotic pressure is increased because you have less blood, but the protein are not passing through membranes. The proteins are remaining in this tubule or this capillary. So this increases your capillary oncotic pressure. 1 plus 2, you end up with reabsorption. Remember, less hydrostatic pressure, more oncotic pressure, you end up with reabsorption. So the moral of the story is, when you have decreased effective arterial blood volume, you are increasing reabsorption of sodium. Hashtag no sodium left behind. So when you decrease your effective arterial blood volume, you increase your filtration fraction and increase sodium reabsorption. The opposite occurs when the hydrostatic pressure is high, the oncotic pressure is low, okay, and you'll end up with sodium secretion and decreased filtration fraction. The renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, when you have decreased effective arterial blood volume, you have decreased blood flow to the afferent artery, the juxtaglomerular cells are gonna kick in and start working like crazy, secreting renin, converting angiotensin-O-genin to angiotensin-1. The kidneys, the lungs, ACE, is gonna convert angiotensin-1 to angiotensin-2. Vasoconstrictor the arterial aldosterone relays to reabsorb sodium and water to increase the effective arterial blood volume and back to normal. Amazing! So let me say the statement that will shock you to the core. Decreased cardiac output will lead to increased sodium reabsorption. How? Because you decrease your effective arterial blood volume, you increase your filtration fraction. The oncotic pressure in the peritubular capillary exceeded the hydrostatic pressure. You can pull fluid called sodium reabsorption. Let me say this profound statement that will shatter your world. Increased cardiac output will decrease sodium reabsorption. How? Because increased effective arterial blood volume will decrease the filtration fraction. Now the peritubular capillary hydrostatic pressure exceeded the oncotic pressure. You can push. You're pushing the fluid out, called secretion. So the moral of the story is, when you have decreased cardiac output and decreased effective arterial blood volume, the kidney will increase sodium reabsorption. That's why a spot urine sodium is less than 20 milliequivalent per liter, and in severe hypovolemia, urine sodium is almost zero, because the kidney is doing a phenomenal job absorbing all of your sodium to increase the water, called osmosis, to maintain your systemic arterial blood volume. Hashtag no sodium left behind. If you love mnemonic and you are a visual learner like me, try Picmonic. See the link in the description. It's a visual mnemonic website for medical students and nursing students. It's absolutely brilliant, and they are not sponsoring this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and join the tribe. Hit the bell to get notification. Go to Facebook. I have about 99 cases on my Facebook page. Follow me on Twitter, SoundCloud, Instagram. Please support this channel on Patreon to help me produce more videos in the future. And it's a nice way for you to be grateful and thankful, like your kidney. I mean, if you're grateful that you have a kidney, you should be grateful that you have a medicosis in your life. Thank you, guys.